Okay, hello everyone. Welcome to this information session about the open call for the global conference on cyber capacity building. My name is Patrick Pawlak. I have recently joined the team as the chair of the program advisory team, which assists the GFCE, World Bank, Cyber Peace Institute, with preparation for the and the World Economic Forum with the preparation for the conference. The purpose of today's call is to give you an insight and an overview of what the conference is about and what its objectives are, as well as more details about the open call. Primarily to allow you to ask questions for clarification if there are certain things from the open call that were not entirely clear and that you would like to get additional information about. I'll like to start with the caveat that there might be certain questions I may not have the answers to, but then we're going to come back to you with more information and the details to the questions I do not necessarily know how to answer. So without further ado, we're going to launch a small presentation that will give you background about the conference, and after that, open the floor for questions and answers. So if we could have the first slide here, please. And the information that maybe is not in the public domain is that the Global Conference on Cyber Capacity Building, the GC3B, as we abbreviate it, has a program composed of 4 pillars. 3 of the pillars have been already assigned by the program advisory team with specific sessions that will be chaired by members of the steering committee that are organizations and countries involved in the preparation of the conference. The open call, which this information session is concerned with, concerns the pillar 4, which focuses really on specific operational solutions. During this call, as I said, we're going to give you a bit of a background on the conference itself, present the pillar 4, so the open call, discuss roles and tasks of the session leads as laid out in the document that has been presented online, and then give you a chance to ask questions for clarifications with regards to the call. If we could have a next slide, please. So the conference itself, as you might have seen, will take place on the 29th and 30th November of 2023 in Accra, Ghana, Ghana being officially one of the co-hosts of this conference. The co-organizers, as I've mentioned, are the GFCE, Cyber Peace Institute, World Bank, and World Economic Forum. The specificity of this event is that it's the first of its kind events that really focus on creating this explicit link between mainstreaming cyber resilience and capacity building in the international development agenda. So the idea is really to showcase this link that exists between different areas of activities and community. Now, what are some of the pillars and the activities that the conference will focus on? As I've mentioned, the conference is structured around 4 pillars. Pillar 1 focuses on making international development cyber resilient. Pillar 2, collaborating to secure digital ecosystem. Pillar 3, cyber capacity building for stability and security. And finally, Pillar 4 on operationalizing solutions. And Pillar 4 is the one that open call is concerned with. Now, if we look at the next slide, please, the setup of the Pillar 4 sessions, the idea is to populate the agenda for the conference with 12 sessions focusing on three tracks that we have identified as the program advisory team. Track A, focusing on strengthening program management. Track B, focusing on implementing successful actions. And track C, sharing tools and resources. In other words, as you apply for the open call sessions, we would like you to indicate under which track your session would fit best. Now, the goal of this pillar is really to identify and leverage good practices, tools, and solutions from cyber capacity building and other fields that can contribute to de-risking and facilitating sustainable, inclusive, and demand-driven development in low and middle-income countries. So we really try to make sure that for this open call, we identify some of those existing solutions that the organizers are maybe not necessarily aware of, and this open call will hopefully help us to identify those. Next slide, please. So what are some of the roles and tasks of the session leads? The main task is really to develop a high quality session that helps deliver on the aims and objectives of the conference, meaning creating and showcasing this connection between sustainable development and capacity building cyber resilience on the other side. Now, the session leads are asked to perform very specific tasks. One, within, of course, certain prescribed parameters that have been presented in the open call. What are some of those responsibilities? The first one is defining session objectives. The second, identifying target groups and key stakeholders. So who is this session really for, and what kind of stakeholder groups you expect to see in order to make sure that the objectives that you have previously identified are delivered. As co-leads, you're also expected to propose and secure speakers, coordinate the session preparations, provide support with on-the-day engagement and management of the session execution. Of course, we asked you in the call as well to select the session format. Now, I would like to maybe clarify that when we talk about preparation of the session, the logistics of the session itself is not something that we expect you to focus on. The logistics will be taken care of by the specific company that's hired by the GFCE to deliver the conference itself. So in other words, the logistics around it is not something you have to be concerned with. What we really ask you as the session leads is to make sure that and help us deliver a high quality session that fits the objectives of the conference itself and sort of contributes to achieving the overall goal. Next slide, please. Oh, next slide is actually questions and answers. So we actually moved pretty fast. If I can then ask those of you who would like to ask questions for clarifications or maybe provide some comments, raise your hand so that we can see who is interested. I'll try to pick those from the participants list, but if I miss someone, I would ask Katerina to help me identify those interested. And then, of course, feel free to use the chat as well. I try to monitor for any questions coming in. We also have on the call, I have identified one person, Robert Collette, who is a member of the program advisory team. So Rob, please feel free to jump in as well and help me provide the answers with relation to some of the questions that might be relevant. I see we already have some hands up. So if we can take the slide down, Katerina, and I will go first to Rose Payne on my list. If I could ask you to switch on your camera so that we can see you, that also would be great. Thank you.
Hi there. Thank you so much. I'm Rose from the International Chamber of Commerce. Sorry to kick off with such a logistics-focused question, but do you have any preference, or will you prioritize sessions which have at least some in-person participants? And is there an option to combine the two? Some people in person,
Yes,
some people
yes. So if I understand correctly, the question is as well about the hybrid format of the sessions with online participation and in person. Is that correct?
Yes, I'm just wondering if you have a particular preference one way or another.
Yeah, I think the conference is designed to be an in-person gathering. So actually the hybrid format of the sessions is not something that the organizers had in mind. Also for the logistical reason, the expectation is that the conference will bring about 1,200 people. So that's quite a big gathering. And I think for logistical reasons, ensuring the let's say a two-way communication during the hybrid sessions would be very complicated. I don't think the decisions about live streaming the session has been taken. So there might be also the possibility to live stream those sessions, but that has not been decided. Now, maybe one important question that sort of explains as well some of the question marks that we have also on the side of the organizers is that while we have set on the location, Accra, Ghana, there are two possible venues where the conference might be taking place. So quite a lot will also depend on, let's say, technical possibilities in those venues on the ground, and whether this option of live streaming will be possible at all. But as a general principle, the conference is supposed to be in-person conference only.
Great, thank you. So just so that I'm totally clear, all participants, all panel members, if we're doing a panel, would be expected to be there in person.
Indeed, yes.
Great, thank you so much.
Thank you, Rose, for your question. Paul.
Hi, good morning.
Yes, we can hear you. Hi. I think we have lost him. No, yes.
Hello, good morning.
Okay, yes. Hi.
Hi, greetings from Canada, from First Conference. Just maybe a follow-up question from what Rose asked. There was this particular field in the application for the sessions where the collaborations with other organizations are enforced, and they're really it will provide more value. And I wanted to ask a question about that. So if there is an organization which is not a member, so how the collaboration could be then created, and whether that organization should send the person on site in Ghana or online. So this would be the question that I have. Thank you.
So when you say the organization that's not a member, you mean they're not a member of the GFCE, is that correct? Or yes. So maybe that's the important first issue to clarify. The conference is not just for the GFCE members only. This is supposed to be a global conference in scope that's also open to the participation and representation from other organizations from outside of the GFCE community. What we are asking for is for organizations, well, and actually this is not a requirement, it's a sort of question that we ask in the form, whether the organizers or the lead intend to involve other organizations in the preparation of the session, or they're going to do it by themselves. Now, we strongly encourage partnerships between different stakeholder groups or representatives of different regions, simply to ensure that we have this conversation happening between different, let's say, communities that sort of better reflect the sort of a problem and the challenge at hand. When we talk about Pillar 4, when we talk about very concrete solutions, ideally, these are the sessions that would not only focus on presenting the solution or a good practice from one organization only, but would try to maybe focus and group similar solutions coming from other organizations or other parts of the world. If you want to focus on one specific solution offered by an organization, ideally then we would expect that the composition of the panel would provide certain diversity of speakers that would give us a better understanding of what kind of tool or good practice are we talking about and how it has played out in different contexts. But again, to clarify, a priori expectation is that all the speakers and panelists are in person in Ghana, Accra. Now, in case this question might come up, let me preempt it. The GFC has certain funds for bringing speakers over to Ghana. So these are resources that will be deployed and used for the specific purpose. And in the meantime, the organizers are also working on sort of expanding this pool of financial support that could be provided for the organizers. For the moment, we have limited resources. And once the session is selected, we start a conversation with the leads to what extent that support would have to be activated. But I want you to know that as a default position, there are certain resources blocked for each of the sessions to help the organizers bring the speakers to Ghana.
Thank you very much. It was very elaborate and very clear. Thanks.
Great. Thanks a lot. I see we have Valentin Gandhi now with his.
Hi everyone. Hi, Patrick. Hello, greetings from Jakarta, Indonesia. My name is Valentine Gandhi. I'm the Chief of Party for the USAID Monitoring, Evaluation, Learning Support activity. And my company is called Bixel, which is a technology for good company. And so we plan to attend this and present a workshop. Our questions are mostly we work with partners in the Global South. And I was wondering if there are any travel sponsorships for participants or even speakers to be brought there. And then a related question is, in the workshop, are there any limitations to how many speakers that should we have? I mean, especially for instance, we are proposing to have cybersecurity under track 1, and we want to test some of the methodologies that we want to, we hope will be a product by itself. And so I was wondering if it's possible. I was wondering if there's any restrictions on the workshop speakers. And final question is, how do we publicize, like, for instance, our workshop once it's selected? Do you have any hashtags or guidelines on, the media, the social media engagement and so on? Thank you.
Right. So thank you for this question. So it links partly to the answers I provided regarding the financial support. With the limited resources that the GFC has managed to secure so far, we have decided to prioritize support to speakers at the conference. So the participants themselves would very likely not receive any support. Now, I say this with a big caveat that should it happen over the next 2 weeks that a wonderful sponsor is going to show up and provide a significant pool of funding for the conference, then of course it's going to be a completely different conversation. But for the time being, this is not the case, and we'll have to make specific choices, and that funding will be limited to speakers and also on a case-by-case basis. Now, with regards to the workshop itself, we sort of rely on you here to provide us your idea of the ideal setup, right? So you have certain time constraints that have been provided with the open call with regards to the length of the sessions, which is basically between 60 and 90 minutes. Now, probably, if we will be looking at the proposals and we see a proposal for a workshop of 60 minutes with 10 speakers, we would probably assume that it might be quite difficult to achieve and deliver a successful workshop without such a time, right? So we rely here on you and your experience as the organizers of similar sessions to convince us about the suitability of the format that you're proposing for the objective of the session itself. Now, I also maybe want to clarify that you should keep in mind that the Pillar 4 is supposed to focus on proposing the solutions or presenting the solutions that are already available and have worked or been tested in specific contexts. So it might probably be, and again, I'm saying this with the caveat that it depends, of course, on the proposals that will be presented. But the workshops that will be testing certain hypotheses only without necessarily sort of giving us a flavor of what has already been done or achieved in a specific field might be complicated to put together. So please keep that in mind, that we also want to hear those concrete solutions that and how they have been used, deployed, and with what results. Now I see there are some there are quite a few comments in the chat, so I'll try to skim through those later, but for the time being we have Emana with the hand up, so over to you.
Is this muted on it? Thank you, Patrick. It's Emana Shunom from Sebastian here in DC. We're a cybersecurity company, and my question is around our proposal. Is there a possibility of having two companies partner in submitting a proposal? And I ask this because sometimes we've had to collaborate maybe with the US Chamber of Commerce or with the Corporate Council on Africa to be able to deliver on a particular session. So is there an allowance for us to put a proposal that is jointly executed by two parties as opposed to just Sebastian putting this out there? And that's one question. My other will be around outreaches. So peradventure, if we're going to propose panel sessions, for instance, I see that when you were speaking, you put the burden of outreach on the company that is going to be leading the sessions. So does that mean we make our outreaches on our own letterheads, or does that come out through the GFCE, or what does that look like? I mean, because sometimes that could impact whether or not speakers accept to join each of the sessions as it is. And then my last question is around the proposal itself. How granular should it be in terms of questions for speakers eventually? Because if we propose that we want to have these speakers and moderators, does the proposal also have to include the questions that we intend to frame for the speakers to potentially respond to? Or can we, leave this at a high level and just generally speak about the goals that we intend to achieve with the panels? So I'd leave it at that.
Yes, great questions. Thank you very much, Amanda. I've realized that I have also skipped one of the questions that Valentine has asked before regarding the support that would be provided to the organizers of the sessions regarding the comms around the conference. So so let me go back to that one, but that partly links as well to your question about the outreach. So the GFCE has a specific comms person who will assist the session organizers with getting the word out. So we will have this sort of centralized, let's say, approach to the communication about the conference and the sessions. But of course, each of your organizations has their own networks and extensive contacts among the clients and the community that best will be best served with the information about that specific session. So of course that will be done in partnership. With regards to the invitations of speakers, for instance, because I guess, Amanda, this is where your question is going, how do we approach this? We, as a principle, ask the leads to invite the speakers themselves. That's simply motivated by the fact that, again, we work with the assumptions that these are the people who you know, who are probably familiar with your organization and might be more responsive when such a request and invitation comes directly from you rather than from GFCE that frankly they may not necessarily be familiar with as an organization. Now, that does not mean that you will be left alone along the process. If you as a session lead tell us, we're happy to send this invitation, but could we get an additional letter of support or some sort of information that's more official and comes from the GC3B as the organizers, of course, we can discuss this and will provide all the necessary sort of a documentation and supports that allows you to sort of maximize the chances of success of getting the speakers you want. That also includes, of course, all the information about the conference itself, the conference pack, the setup, and so on and so forth. Now, your first question about joint proposals, yes, absolutely, that is possible. We foresee this in the form, so please simply indicate what the name of the organization who would be co-organizing the session with you. With regards to granularity of the proposals, we do not expect you to give us a very detailed description of what each of the speakers will be saying and so on. I mean, if you don't have that much space in the form to provide that information, if you already know, and you sort of want to strengthen your application and the chances of getting your session approved, of course, that's something that will give us an idea, okay, these people have really thought the session through, they know what they want to get of each of the speakers and so on. That can also be a potential solution in case you do not necessarily have a name, but you know that for our session, we would like to have a representative from I don't know, the development bank who's going to talk about that specific aspect. We would like to have a representative of civil society who will talk about this. That will already give us an idea of how you want to structure the session, where that's going to go, and help us make the assessment. I hope I have answered your question. So the more details you can give us, the better. But please keep in mind that the session development, the content, and nitty-gritty details will be worked on later on. Here, we really want to get a good idea of what your thinking is and what you would like to get the session to help us simply evaluate how the session fits within the overall objectives of the conference and what are the chances that you actually will be able to deliver it successfully. So thank you, Emana, for this question. I'd like one question from the chat that I saw was posted regarding what happens in case we have 2 or 3 or 4 submissions concerning the same topic. That's a very good question. That really will depend on how similar these proposals are and whether there is really a scope in the program to focus on the same issue throughout many different sessions. It might be that in some cases, indeed, we might reach the conclusion that actually merging 2 proposals into one is a much better chance of ensuring the quality and success of the session. In which case, of course, we will not impose it on the organizers, but it might be a suggestion that that we will direct towards you, hoping that jointly we'll be able to find a solution. But frankly, I think it will very much depend on how similar those sessions proposal would be. It might be that even if you cover a similar topic, the approach, the solution that is being proposed, the speakers that will be addressing the specific problem are completely different, in which case, of course, we may find justification. So that will really depend also on the final poll of the submissions that we're going to receive. I'm going to go back to people on the call, and I have the next person. I think it's Audi Shelley. I don't. If we could ask you to take the floor. Yes.
Sure thing. Hi, Patrick. This is Alex Odesheli from the Global Cyber Alliance. I have a couple questions. One, whether organizations are limited to one session proposal when we submit our ideas. Secondly, when we may learn if our idea was successful for planning logistics purposes. And then thirdly, sort of going back to your earlier point about leveraging some financial resources, how we can engage in a conversation with the organizers about leveraging some of those organizations for speakers, especially for small organizations, for diversity on the panels, and whether we should indicate that in our proposed submission, or what the preference there would be. Thank you very much.
Great, thank you, Alex. Great questions. Let me start with the easiest one, which is when you can expect the answers. Our idea is to really have the decisions by the end of June, the first week of July latest. So we really want to move fast, simply because we are aware that the time left for the preparation of the sessions is not abundant. We have a few months only, and for anyone active in the conference business, we know that we are quite with already. We're very much aware of that. So the first week of July, latest the second week, is something is the timeline that we're working with to communicate those decisions to you. You are not limited to one session, so you can submit 2 or 3 even if you want, probably with the assumption that one of those sessions is going to be ultimately successful, again depending on the total number and diversity of the sessions we're going to have. Now that maybe gives me an opportunity as well to think a bit out of the box. It might also happen that for the sessions that are not necessarily accepted as proposals as such, we will reach out afterwards and follow up, trying to find an accommodation within the existing or accepted program for the conference. There might be simply certain things or solutions or ideas that we may want to be willing to sort of find a place within the existing setup of the conference. So please keep that in mind as well. Now, regarding the resources for the conference and how you can engage and when with the organizers, I think this is the conversation that we would have as soon as we have the decision about the approval or acceptance of the session. However, as I said, we do foresee that each of the sessions will get certain sponsorship. Now, if we're talking about, let's say, a round table where you expect 4 speakers and all of those 4 speakers would have to be funded, that indeed is something that I don't think is currently foreseen by the organizer. So I think what would be interesting for us in making the assessment of the sessions, and here I want to also stress that your financial needs for the session organization would not be a decisive factor in selecting the session or not. Our focus is really on trying to make sure that we have the best program possible. So if you already know that the speakers who you want to engage for the specific session will require travel support, please do include this information, not for us to sort of use it against the application or in support of it, but simply it gives us better situational awareness as well to say like, yes, you know, and maybe rather than choosing 2 sessions where we can fly only 4 speakers, we can sort of accommodate resources differently and work with the session where the full support would be provided. So it is not a decisive factor. If you know that you will require such a support, please indicate this already, and that will already give us a better picture of how we would be moving forward with the session preparations.
Thanks,
So
Patrick.
Alex, I hope I've provided all the answers.
No, that was wonderful. I just have a very quick clarifying
Yeah.
question with regards to the session submissions. Would we then, if we have 2 ideas, for instance, submit each time, so register an interest and submit a new idea on the website? I suppose the answer is yes. Just want to make sure.
Yes,
Okay.
you would have to submit them as a separate, as 2 separate sessions, simply because that's how we will be reviewing them later as a separate submissions. We want to avoid a situation where we will be looking through, a submission from my organization, but then there are 3 different sort of ideas, let's say. So please submit them separately. That also, frankly, will allow us to see, let's say, how many applications Global Cyber Alliance has submitted, right? And if we see that you have 3 applications, 2 of which maybe overlap with similar proposals by other organizations, we might then follow up with you and say, like, okay, well, would you be interested in that specific one? I would imagine that each organization will also have the preference of what it is that they would like to organize. So again, that communication would help us sort of engage and follow up with you better afterwards. I see Catalina now with the hand up.
Hi, Patrick. Wait a second. I don't know why my video is not working. I do hope that you can hear me.
Now it is working and we can see you and hear you.
Perfect. Hi, everyone. I'm Katarina Stroje. I am program manager with the Council of Europe with the Cybercrime Program Office. Greetings from Bucharest. I have 3 questions. One was already put by Rose in the chat also regarding the visa support for the participants. We might need also visa support for some of the speakers, but maybe you can touch upon when you reach back to the chat. And the other 2, one is very practical logistical information I would need is interpretation. So I don't know if you are envisaging to offer support in terms of interpretation for the sessions, or at least for the interpretation equipment, and we can bring the interprets, for example, because we are interested in applying with at least 1 session, and we would need interpretation because we are operating as a global project, the one that I'm managing, so we would need interpretation for the speakers. And I will follow with the other question afterwards.
Okay, great. So the longer we take, the more we get in the direction of the questions that I may not necessarily have the answers to, but these are all great questions that I have taken note of. Visa support for participants and the speakers. I think the letter from the GFCE is not the problem. However, I think when you apply for the visa to Ghana, what will be more useful is probably an official letter from the Ghanaian authorities. I cannot commit them on the call and I don't know. So I take this note and the question to sort of a follow up and ask our Ghanaian co-organizers how that would work. A priori, I don't think that should be an issue because we know that this invitations will be required, but that's something that indeed we should already raise. So if you guys don't mind, for the questions that I do not have the answers to, I'll try to get them by the end of the week, early next week latest, so that you have all the information and can take informed decision about the submission. So a visa is one of those questions, and the interpretation, unfortunately, is the other of another question that I would have to take back to the GFCE. I agree with you that given the global scope of the conference and the ambition to bring participants and speakers from different regions, I would expect that this is going to be organized centrally by the conference organizers. But let me double and triple check that and come back to you. But I think we all on this call can have a sort of a reasonable expectation that this is indeed going to be the case. But let me double check and confirm that. And the other questions, Catalina, that you have, I hope that my lack of answer is not jeopardizing the other
No.
ones.
No, indeed, many thanks. And I don't know how it is to organize such a huge conference. So, I mean, the answers are going to come. And I commend you on the fact that you organized this really quickly, because like that you will also have the opportunity to learn from our experience and our needs. So yeah, it's enough for the moment, at least that you are considering interpretation and visa upon arrival. That's also an option in Ghana. So you might speak with the Ghanaians colleagues. The last question that I have is regarding the audience. So basically, after you finalize the selection process, you will announce the sessions, I assume, right? What will be the process to register? Because you said you expect 1,000 to 2,000 participants, and let's say the maximum allowed for one session would be 100 to 200 for the panel format, correct? So that means what? First registers, first served, or based on what type of criteria we're going to have the audience? Because maybe we could consider proposing a session which is targeting criminal justice authorities, maybe, or only law enforcement. So might not be of particular interest, or others might benefit more. Let's say how you would.
That's a great question. So the sort of a scheme that GC3B is working with is the following. First of all, I should stress that this will be a by invitation only conference. So this 1,200 speakers are, 1,200 participants are people who are identified in advance of the conference and receive the invitation from the organizers. It's not going to be the conference where anybody can sort of register and show up. Having said that, we do foresee the mechanism on the GC3B website whereby people interested in attending the conference will be able to express interest. That's simply to make sure that some of the organizations or individuals who are not our radar screen might be interested and then receive the invitation as a consequence of expressing the interest. Now, your question about how will the participants be identified, is there going to be some registration and so on? That's frankly an ongoing conversations that we have. Because of course, as you rightly point out, with four sessions, let's say, taking place at the same time, we work with a number of 300 people potentially attending one session, right? The past models applied in similar conferences by the Dutch colleagues and also by the GFCE have been that it's on the first come, first serve basis. So basically, assuming that the room fills up, people are asked to move to another session. Now, with regard to your specific session, and maybe here I'm thinking aloud, so so please please bear with me. We would probably have some questions about the session that would address and target one specific community. So in your case, if we think about law enforcement agents only, I would probably say, Catalina, it would be great if you could think of how to actually present and sort of extract the lessons from your cybercrime project towards and for broader community. What can the bigger cyber capacity building community learn from the experience of the Glassy Plus when it comes to the implementation of the project, so that rather than bringing only and attracting only people with law enforcement background or interest, you actually reach out to the broader community that includes development actors, that includes multinational donor banks, that includes civil society, and so on. So we would really like these sessions to be designed in a way that appeal and attract a broader audience interested in cyber capacity building, rather than keep those in silos, you know, law enforcement community on one hand, diplomats attending only the cyber diplomacy sessions, and so on. So I hope it sort of gives you the answer. I'm not sure this is the answer you sort of were hoping for, but there you go.
Thanks a lot, Patrick. No, indeed, all clear. But I have now another question based on what you were just mentioning, because it will be invitational. I had no idea, so I was not aware of that. Thank you. You would consider, closer to the event, of course, to publish a list of participants or registered participants? Just I'm asking not for the sessions themselves, but for the, let's say, networking purposes or bilateral meetings, right? To handpick some other counterparts that we would like to maybe.
I hear you. I do not know, to be honest, what the answer to that be. So again, I have to check that. But let me maybe go back to the list of participants. So how we, for instance, working, just to give you an idea, with the sessions that have been already pre-selected as part of the other 3 pillars, is that we do work closely with the leads to identify those key stakeholders and target groups that are relevant for success of the session. So assuming your session is successful, we would have a conversation about, Catalina, who do you think should be in the room for the session? Who are these 50 people you would definitely like to have, or 50 organizations you would definitely like to have in the room to help you sort of spread the message and achieve the objectives of the session? We will have this conversation with you. We will share with you who are the organizations and stakeholders we already have on our radar screen, and then see if there are overlaps and whether you will sort of try to see how to potentially use the speakers, participants who have already been identified and sort of invited to support your session, or whether maybe some of the participants and speakers you're thinking of bringing can potentially feed into the conversations in other sessions, right? So together with the program advisory team, we will work closely with you to sort of figure out some of those questions that we may not necessarily have the answers to at that specific stage, exactly with regards to the participants, you know, the concrete names and so on. On the list of participants, I am, I'll take note of that. I know that with the regular GFCE events, upon registration, people can check the box about having the information about their participation included and sort of presented in the application that exists. So if this is a standing practice of the GFCE, I don't think that would be an issue. From your perspective, I think what would be probably more interesting is to know which countries or which organizations from what countries are going to be on the ground for potential bilateral conversations and so on. And that's probably the information that, of course, can be shared closer to the date.
Thanks a lot, Patrick. I think that's all for the moment. Thanks a lot.
Great, fantastic, thank you. So I have 3 specific questions from Catalina that I have to follow up on. I'm trying to see and go through some of the questions that we have in the chat. So please bear with me. So visa support for the speakers, are you able to issue invitation letters? As I said, I'll come back to you on that. We'll have to check with the Ghanaian organizers. I don't think it's a problem for the GFCE, but given that the conference will be taking place in Ghana, we'll probably need a local authorities to do that. Is there a limitation on the number of proposals from Bruna? So I have answered that. No, but probably if you submit 10 applications, as I said, it might be a bit difficult. What platform will the organizers use to manage the conference, knowledge management post-conference? That is a very good question that I do not have the answer to. As I've mentioned, the logistics for the conference itself will be taken care of by the contractor that the GFCE is going to hire. So I would imagine that that can be one of the elements to discuss with them, but I'm taking note of that questions as well. Let me quickly see if there are any questions in the chat that you guys have asked and I am not necessarily picking. Please feel free to raise your hand. That might be also the most secure way to make sure that I am not going to miss any of those. Yes, I see there is a hand up. As Mabunda, sorry, I probably cannot tell the first or the last name. Yes, there you are. We can see you now.
I am Sagwadi Mabunda. I'm from the University of the Western Cape in Cape Town. And what I wanted to ask is, on the call, I see it always refers to organizations and institutions. Is it a must that if I'm submitting a proposal to be a session lead, I must be a part of an organization and or institution? Or can I submit something in my personal capacity? So for instance, the reason I'm asking is I'm considering submitting something with a colleague of mine who's not in my institution, she's at a different institution, but we're also not working together, but we know each other from conferences and such. So can we submit on a personal capacity as opposed to through the university or his company?
That is a good question. Frankly, I do not have the answer to. So you being from two different institutions is not necessarily a problem, because as I've mentioned earlier, partnerships between different organizations are something that we encourage and we do not have an issue with. Now, is there a requirement of the applicants for the leads being in institutions and organizations? That is something I have not thought of, to be honest. So let me come back to you on this. I do not know what the, to be honest, what the initial thinking was when it comes to the submission of the session, whether we simply wanted to avoid the situation of having proposals submitted by 5,000 different individuals, which of course would make the whole process really very complicated. I think the preference probably would be for the organizations or institutions to submit, but let me double check that and come back to you. By the way, for those of you who are on the call, I would imagine that you have requested the connection information from Katerina, so we should know who you are. But in case this is not the case, this was not the case, and you connecting through the link that was shared, and we may not be aware that you were on the call, please do send us an email afterwards, because all the answers to the questions that I have or I don't have the answers to, we will share in writing after the call. So simply to make sure that you have not missed anything. And we are also going to prepare maybe a document that would be shared on the website of the GC3B as well. So please keep an eye out for this document as well. As I said, we'll try to put it together by the end of the week or early next week latest. So we have 5 minutes left on this call. I'd like to see very quickly if there are any other questions that that require urgent answer, and if I do not pick those up, please let me please again raise your hand. But I see, I think I have answered to most of them, and if not, we will go through the chat afterwards. So if there are no other urgent questions or requests for clarifications, I would maybe wrap up and sum up some of the main points and questions that we still have to come back to you. One concerning the visa support for the participants and speakers. Two, concerning the interpretation. Three, regarding the list of participants and whether those lists would be available ahead. Four, applications in the individual capacity. And the fifth question I have here concerns what platform will be used to manage and share information post-conference as well. So these are the 5 questions we're going to come back to you on. This session has also been recorded and will be made available to you or whoever else will want to get additional information afterwards. In the chat, you have the email address to which you can send us an email and contact information in case this was not done before the call. And the email is contact@gc3b.org. So feel free to send us email also with any other questions that you might have following that call. We will not organize another information session, but we'll be responding to questions by email. So please feel free to reach out to us. And with that, I would like to thank you all for joining us. We hope to read your applications in the coming weeks. And I'd like to thank my colleague Katerina, who put this call together and also was in touch with you and will be in touch with you regarding the session preparation. So thank you all. The link to the application and the open call is also in the chat. Remember that the deadline is 18th of June at 1800 GMT. So as I said, we hope to hear from you and with your applications later on. Have a wonderful rest of the day or the evening.
Last question.
Yes, sorry. Yes.
So sorry.
Yes. Please.
The recording that you've made for this session, are you going to make that available just so we can review?
Yes,
your
that will be made available. Yes.
Fantastic. Thank you so much.
Okay, great. Thank you very much, everyone. And as I said, we hope to hear from you soon and stay in touch. Bye for now.